One of the most challenging things you can do in this life is to set out to build a business. Yes, you can make a lot of money doing it. You can create financial freedom doing it. You can have opportunities to travel the world and do so much more and get time back with your family because time is one of those assets you never get a refund on. But when you decide to build a business, even though it has all those great benefits, it's still one of the hardest things you can do. I know this because I've been an entrepreneur for over 10 years now, and I understand the rigors of what it is like. And let me tell you, I'm sure there are plenty more rigors that I have not experienced yet. But today, I want to speak courage and hope into your life. If you are struggling to take the next step, if you are feeling discouraged, if you are feeling overwhelmed, if you feel like things aren't moving as quickly as they should, if you feel like, man, why did I decide to do this in the first place? Because it is not working out the way I expected it to, then I have a message for you, and it comes straight from the book of Joshua. In Joshua chapter 1, verse 6, Jesus gives this strong encouragement to Joshua, and it's not just an encouragement, it is a command. And I want to ask you a question. If you know in your heart that you were supposed to build a business, that you were meant to build financial freedom for you and those you love, that you were meant to impact people, why would God give you that vision, give you that passion, plant that seed in your heart, and then let it die? But what happens is we have these expectations that things are going to go really well within a certain time frame, or we're going to get to a certain amount of revenue within a certain number of weeks or months or years. And when it doesn't work out the way we expected, we start to doubt the vision in the first place, and we either think, did I totally miss the boat, or is God just, messing with me, and I don't know if I should trust him? Neither of those are true. If God gave you the vision, and he will see you not just to it, he will see you through it. But you must remember, God never made any promises about how soon you will make money, how soon you will win clients, how soon things will go well for you from an external point of view. And we so quickly prejudge what is well and what is not well because we assume, look, if I'm not getting the external results I want, then something must be wrong. But do not forget, God doesn't just see the outside, he sees the heart. He's working on the inside as well because a certain level of character must be developed so that we are equipped to handle the success that he blesses us with. I want you to listen to this message to Joshua. It's so powerful. It says, "Be strong and courageous, for you shall give this people possession of the land, which I swore to their fathers to give them. Only be strong and very courageous. Be careful to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you may have success wherever you go." Now, this passage is interesting to me because he doesn't say, be strong because I'm going to give you strength, or be courageous because I'm going to give you courage. He literally says to Joshua, be strong, be courageous. In other words, he gives him a command because he knows Joshua has the ability to obey that command. God will never give you something and tell you to do something that he doesn't give you the strength and ability to follow through on. Now, we would think, well, maybe Jesus says, well, Joshua, look at the future. Let me give you a vision. Or look, even though these people in Jericho seem really powerful, let me tell you something. You're going to crush those walls. They're going to tumble down when you blow those trumpets. He didn't do any of that. He doesn't give him any tangible hope, any literal physical explanation. And man, do you see this in your life as well? Does God actually come down and say, look, here's how much money you're going to make by this date. Here's how many clients you're going to make by this date. Or here's where your business is going to be by this date. Or here's how that ministry is going to take off by this date. He doesn't do that because he wants you to trust him. And whatever I can see with my eyes, I no longer have to trust. But man, when I'm blindfolded and I take that step, it is truly a step of faith. When Indiana Jones takes that step, he cannot see anything beneath his foot, but then the rock comes out and boom, he stands on it and he's okay. He literally had to believe. He had nothing else to go on. But you have so much more to go on because you do not serve a God without a history of faithfulness and a history of kindness and love. The God whom you claim to love, the God who I claim to love, is a faithful God. Again, He does not promise you specifics like when you're going to get to where you want to be, when you're going to pay off that bill that you really want to pay off, when you want to take your wife on that really cool vacation that you can't afford because you're always scraping. But let me tell you something. God will give you the strength and the courage if you simply believe his word. That is why Jesus tells Joshua, be strong and courageous. Literally, he says, be strong, be courageous. Hint, hint, Joshua, if you trust me, you will have the strength. Joshua, if you believe me, you will have the courage. Now, what is he giving him courage for? I find this very interesting. Listen to this. For you shall give this people possession of the land which I swore to their fathers to give them. God is saying, look, all the way back to Abraham, we are talking hundreds of years. Over 400 years ago, I promised Abraham this land. God, it took you 400 years? God's timing is not our timing. He does things in his timing. 1,000 years to the Lord is as one day, and one day is as 1,000 years. But he's still going to fulfill his promise. So God is saying, Joshua, I promised this, now I'm going to fulfill it. Now the problem for Joshua is very tangible. As you probably know, when the spies were sent into the land of Jericho, they felt like grasshoppers compared to this enemy. These men were huge warriors. And out of 12 spies, only 2 of them, Joshua and Caleb, way back when Moses was leading, actually believed they could make it. Only 2 out of the 12 actually believed and had faith in God that they could win. So if you just take the average man and you set him up to run a business, let me tell you something. He's not going to believe he can do it when he starts running into problems, which means if you're going to succeed, you're going to have to be more than average. You're going to have to be stronger than the average dude. Like, this is your calling, so believe it. You're going to have to level up. You're going to have to man up. You're going to have to do stuff that maybe your brother or maybe your dad or maybe your uncle or maybe your friend from high school never would have expected them to have to do. But you got to do it because God's called you to it. He will call you through it. He will give you the strength and courage to do it. This land was not just one army. It was the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, the Jebusites, and a whole lot of other ites. And Israel was smaller than most of their armies. Not only did they have fewer in number compared to one army, they had to go against multiple armies. In fact, later on in Joshua, you have this league of kings, and they pull together around, I think it was 5 different nations to come together as this massive army to go against Israel. Do you ever feel like this when you're building a business? You are up against competitors who are so much stronger than you, so much more market share. Or you're up against time. You're like, man, I don't have any more time in the day, but I can't afford to hire someone right now. How do I get out of this place of stuck? And that's where you decide first on the inside, I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be courageous. God will give me the strength to do it. Look, if business was easy, everyone would do it. That is why in the world, the vast majority of people are employees because they need that consistent, predictable paycheck. But it's a bit deceiving as well because you could get fired like that without any warning. There's no law against it. It could happen at any time. So when you build a business, yes, it's much harder than being an employee, but I would not say the risk is higher because you have no guarantee that tomorrow you have a job and now that money stops coming in. What are you going to do? With a business, the nice part is you get to decide how and when you build it. But let me warn you, a lot of people have this fantastical idea that when they become their own boss, it's going to be wonderful. It's going to be so fun. I get to work when I want to work. I get to go on a walk when I go on a walk. I get to hit the gym in the middle of the day if I want. Being your own boss is one of the hardest things in the world because no one else is telling you, get out of bed, get to work at this time. There's no accountability. So you literally, if you want accountability, you have to create it. That's why in Craftsman, we have a whole team of dudes who are constantly encouraging and holding each other accountable, who meet once a month for what is called the round table. Where in fact, I'm going to share something with you really quickly. So there was one of our craftsmen. He was discouraged for weeks. like really, really struggling to get through the next steps and trying to figure out what's his showstopper, what's that big banger statement that explains what he does. And after we had our roundtable meeting just a few days ago, here's what he had to share. He says, "Good morning, brother. How's your video recording going today?" Listen to what he says. He said, "I've recorded my long-form video for YouTube last night." It's part of his marketing plan. "And I plan on launching it on Monday. I've also been remodeling my channel. Our group conversation, talking about the roundtable, inspired me to get back on YouTube." He had been off YouTube for a while, doing really well on LinkedIn, but he wants to have another channel that brings in more clients. "I feel refreshed. And when you started talking about getting a bunch of applications, I was like, I want it too." And then he goes on, he's like, "I cannot wait. See, now that I figured out my topic and I feel good about it, I need to build a funnel. I know it's coming up in Craftsman and I honestly can't wait." This guy was encouraged because he's in a community of other dudes helping him. There is no context for a follower of Jesus in the entire Bible where you do it by yourself, because the Lone Ranger is the dead ranger. You need other people. But back to what God tells Joshua. He tells him to be strong and courageous. And I want to share one more thing with you, because a lot of people trip up on the next part I'm about to read. He says, "Be careful to do according to all the law." By the way, 618 commandments. "According to all the law, which Moses, my servant, commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left." Okay, let's stop right there. Okay, what is God telling Joshua? He's saying, do exactly what I told you in the law. Over 600 commands. I believe it's 618, could be 613, but it's the same number of commands as there are seeds in a pomegranate. Go Grok or ChatGPT it. You can correct me on this. Just comment below. Over 600 commands. And he's saying, obey all of them. That's all. Okay, hold on. Over 600 commands? And he goes, and then he says, "Be careful to not turn to the right or to the left." Okay, why are you telling me this, Jesus? Listen to this. "So that you may have success wherever you go." Okay, I have to obey over 600 commands so that I have success, which implies the opposite case is if I turn to the right away from the commands or to the left away from the commands, I'm not going to succeed. How in the world can I pull this off as a human who struggles with sin, not just daily, probably on an hourly basis? How in the world? Have you met a single man in this world, I don't care how righteous he is, who doesn't struggle and stumble and fall from time to time? Paul himself talked about this in Romans. He's like, I do the very thing I don't want to do, and the very thing I want to do, I don't do. Like, there's this constant war in my soul. God, do you realize the burden you just placed on me? You're telling me to obey these commands so that I succeed. How do I do this? And it tempts some people who actually do go out and try to keep all these commands. And they try really hard, and they fail, and they get discouraged, and they give up. And they decide that either they're a loser, or God wasn't faithful and he misled them, or they don't care, they just don't care, they're just going to go do something else, and they drop this vision that God gave them. Let me share something with you. It does not depend on you. You fulfilling God's law, you fulfilling his will for your life does not depend on you. So take that pressure off right now, because I'm going to read something to you that is so life-giving. It's 2 Corinthians 5:21. He, God the Father, made him, Jesus, the Son of God, who knew no sin. Jesus he didn't just not sin, he never knew it intimately because he never did it, not even in his mind. God made Jesus, who knew no sin, to be sin on our behalf. What? Jesus became sin on our behalf. He took all of my sins, all your sins, upon himself on the cross in our place, so that we might become the righteousness of God in him. In other words, when Jesus tells Joshua to obey all these commands, when you read the context of Scripture and understand that Paul so clearly said the law was not given actually to save Israel. It was given to damn Israel. And you're going, hold on, Seth, what are you preaching? Let me explain. The law was given as a tutor, as Paul says in Galatians, to lead us to Jesus, to show us our inability to keep it. Hey guys, I got news for you. If you try as hard as you can to obey every command of this word, you will fail. And the harder you try, the more you fail. And then even when you do well, it becomes self-righteous because I'm trying in my power and not God's. It's like, how do you escape that? And if my success depends on my obedience, I am so screwed, it is indescribable. And Jesus says, no, it's okay. It's okay, Seth. It's okay. I was screwed for you. I was punished for you. I became sin so that your righteousness would not depend on what you do and what I do, but on him. And the only thing God asks us to do now is just to believe and trust that. And then as a result, righteousness will flow out of your life as a byproduct of the power of the Holy Spirit who now lives in you. Do you see how that takes the pressure off? I leave you with this. You can be strong. You can be courageous. And when you keep running up against the wall as you build your business, know something. That's part of God's plan too. He is doing something. He's working on the inside. So later, he can bless the outside. It is part of his plan, and it is his faithfulness and goodness. But don't forget number 2. Yes, God calls you to honor him, but that comes through the suffering and the death and the resurrection of Jesus of Nazareth, who is the King of Kings, who's coming back someday. So yeah, if God gave you a vision to build a business, if God gave you a picture and said, look, John, Mark, Seth, Matthew, Vlad, whoever it is, I want you to go out and you're going to do this. Don't get discouraged when you have slumps, when you feel like the boat is sinking, when you got 3 holes in the boat and you're shoveling the water out while you're trying to move forward, while you're trying to build a bigger boat. Like, it's crazy. I know it is. I understand it. But there's something bigger going on. It's what man doesn't see. People always judge people based on how much money does he have? How hot is his girlfriend or wife? What kind of car do they drive? How big of a house do they live in? They're always judging. And God said to Samuel, do not judge on the outside, for I see the heart, which is why God chose David, the scrawny teenager, the shepherder of sheep, out with the stinky sheep, wasn't even brought in for the message of Samuel. The dad didn't even consider him for that. And God says, that's my man, because God sees the heart. So next time you get discouraged, please know something. God knows you, he loves you, and he sees what's going on the inside, and he will not give up on you.